Imagine witnessing a moment so monumental that it completely changes the entire trajectory of your life. Well, that happened to me when I was 4 years old. I was watching the Olympics for the very first time, and front and center on my screen, I see this woman by the name of Flojo. She has this long, gorgeous hair and these radiant nails that shone red, white, and blue. She stood up behind her starting block, stared at the finish line, and propelled down the track towards Olympic glory. When she crossed the finish line, she had just broken the Olympic record in 10.62 seconds, and she was led to an Olympic podium where they put a gold medal around her neck, and then they played the United States national anthem for the entire world to hear. At that moment, I was hooked. I knew that I wanted Olympic glory just like her. So I go to my mom and I say, "Mom, what's it gonna take for me to be like this Flojo lady?" And she said, "Hard work, perseverance." I said I was 4, right? Did she remember I was 4? But as time went on, it was my mom who was right. We lived in a type of environment where there was poverty, homelessness, and displacement. And I learned through those times that perseverance meant no matter how hard or how long, you never give up. I held on to my faith in athletics because I knew that that was truly the only way I was going to break this cycle of poverty in my life. I like to say that my Olympic training started when I was in high school. But it was my junior year in high school when our team was preparing to go to the national championships, and one of our relay team members got injured. Now, my coach had this athlete slated to run on the 4x1, the 4x2, and the 4x4. So I knew that I had to step up. I knew that I had to be there for my team. And I knew that you cannot run a 3-man relay or a 4-man relay with just 3 athletes. So I stepped in. Now I'm watching my team. They're handing the baton from one athlete to the next, and I see it getting closer to me, and I'm kind of scared, but I stand there, and my teammate comes towards me, and she hands me the baton, and she says, "Go!" And I felt a source of power and a source of fuel. I was able to run faster than my fitness. See, I had left sprinting a long time ago. I was singularly focused only on the high jump, and I was not ready to run a relay, but I tapped into this unimaginable strength. At that competition, I was slated to only win 1 national title, but I ended up walking away with 4. Yeah, you guys can call me Thanos. 2 years later, I had my first opportunity to try out for the Olympic trials. I achieved my goal of getting a college scholarship. And so I'm at the Olympic trials. I am lined up against the nation's best high jumpers, many of them who had already been Olympians. And so I stand at my mark like I had seen Flojo do so many years before. I leaned back and I barreled towards the bar. And I jumped again and again and again and again. And I cleared bar after bar after bar until there were only 3 women standing. I had made my first Olympic team. I traveled to Athens, Greece, the Olympic Games where they were talking about the wild street dogs. And while everybody was talking about the wild street dogs, I was struggling to clear the bar. I crashed and I burned. Failing to get an Olympic medal, I didn't even make it out of the final. And then I persevered, like my mom had taught me so many years before. And in Beijing in 2008, I once again got to represent Team USA in the Bird's Nest, where everybody was clamoring about this guy named Usain Bolt who was breaking 3 world records. I was sitting there, weaning a nursing 1-year-old, jumping in the rain, trying my best, but only coming away with 6th place. And yet I persevered. And then I went to London in 2012, where the Queen of England had a stunt double parachute out of a helicopter. And I went and competed, and yet again, short of the medal stand. In 2016, I was able to compete in the Rio Olympic Games. Now, this was the most dramatic of all my Olympic Games. I made it past the prelims, I got to the final, and I get to the point where there are only 4 women left in the competition. I'm the last jumper of the competition, and every other woman failed all 3 of their attempts. So it was my turn. So once again, I lean back. Now let me tell you, if I clear this bar, I am an Olympic gold medalist. But if I miss it, I am the dreaded first place loser, which is 4th place to all Olympians. So I lean back and I power towards the bar just like Flojo, just like I had done that first Olympic trials. And I clear my head, my shoulders, my back, my bum, my hamstrings, my calves, and I peek up just for a little bit of a second to see if the bar is still standing. And to my amazement, yes, it's still there. And so I celebrate in the air just a little bit. And then it was a mistake. I knocked the bar off with my heel, and it wiggled and wobbled, and one side fell, and then the other. I was devastated. 28 years of hard work amounted to nothing. I went home, and while I was a mother of 3 amazing children, I had a successful marriage. I had won world championships. I was the 2-time American record holder. I failed to get an Olympic medal after 4 tries, and I felt like such a failure. So I went home, and I did what most of us would do. I called my old friends that I hadn't spoken to in 16 years, Ben and Jerry. And so I'm online shopping for bigger pants, eating gallon after gallon, and then my messages on my phone start ringing. Congratulations, Olympic medalist. Like, what are you talking about? It wasn't until my phone rang that I understood what had happened. When I had a nursing 1-year-old at home, 8 years earlier at the Olympic Games in Beijing, it was determined that 3 women that finished in front of me had actually cheated, and the medal would be reallocated to me. Yeah. I had this amazing ceremony where I went to an amphitheater in Beverly Hills, and they took this medal and they gave it to my 3-year-old son, who gave it to my 5-year-old daughter, who gave it to my 9-year-old daughter, who gave it to my husband, who gave it to Mr. Probes, who put it around my neck. And I was so happy, but something was missing. Now, I don't want to take away from this moment, but what I thought would be experienced, like the fireworks that I saw at Walt Disney World just driving down the highway, felt more like that drunk uncle in a Speedo on the 4th of July twirling with rollerblades and sparklers in each hand. And so I decided that I was going to do what the next logical step, and I was going to go and enter the workforce. And so I ended up getting a job at a Fortune 100 company as a financial consultant. And I learned that self-help and self-care was a huge part of my life. I had to prioritize it. So in addition to going on fishing trips like this with my family, I started doing self-breast exams. Now, for 2 years, these exams were uneventful. But one time, I found this itsy-bitsy tiny rice-sized lump. I went to the doctor, and the doctor told me not to worry about it. It's just a lymph node. But a year later, that lump had tripled in size. So I went back, and this time I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Now, I had an important decision to make. Was I going to allow this diagnosis to take me under, or was I going to fight? I'm kind of petty. You guys know I will train for 4 years to jump over a bar for 2 hours. So of course, I decided to fight. They say when you are facing a life or death situation, it is your life that flashes before your eyes. But in my case, it wasn't my life that flashed before my eyes. It was the lives of my children and my husband without me. And I could not live with that. I went into my garage and I began recording. I grabbed my phone and I said, this is not the message that I thought I'd be recording today. I thought that I'd be telling you that I might be going for my 5th Olympic Games, but instead I'm telling you that I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Please do your self-breast exams. Because I found it early, it was treatable, and I had a lot of options. And I stopped recording, and I posted it online. But then I started to dive deep and understand what this really meant. I learned that 1 in 8 women in their lifetime in the US will be diagnosed with breast cancer, and that men get breast cancer. And I knew that I had to do something. I would use my platform to galvanize women all over the world, to help them understand that they have to advocate for themselves. But what was my platform? I was a number cruncher. And then I realized exactly what I had to do. I had to dive back into the Olympic ring, and I had to train for my 5th Olympic Games so that I could use the media conglomerate that the Olympic Games are and bring awareness to breast cancer. My treatment will require a double mastectomy and months of chemotherapy. I needed to use this platform to bring attention to this disease. And I started to feel the responsibility, not just for myself, but for your family, for your mother, for your sons, for your daughters, for your parents, and for what it might mean to you if you were facing this diagnosis. And then I began to feel energized, just as I did just one time before. When I was running that relay and they handed me that baton, I felt strength, unimaginable strength that I didn't even know was there. And so after getting the blessing of my doctors, I began to train through chemotherapy. I pushed through the nausea, the vomiting, the hair loss, the rashes in unimaginable places, the shedding fingernails. I pushed through it all. And some days, my training would just be walking with a walker. Sometimes it would just be getting out of bed. But other days, I had the energy to do stadium runs, to lift weights, to sprint. I felt the power and energy that came with carrying all of you on my back. This was the day that I decided that I no longer wanted to sit and watch my hair slide off of my scalp. I decided that it was time to let go of the old Chaunte and embrace the new. Everything was going according to plan. I was training well, I was in the right position, I knew that I was ready, and there was nothing that was gonna stop me from getting back to that Olympic stage. COVID-19 hit my family. Everyone in my house was diagnosed just when vaccinations were becoming widely available to everybody. And I tried to train, but my lungs could just not take the thrashing. And for the first time in my life, I failed to qualify for the Olympic trials. And so as I'm watching all of the media that I had recorded months before, I see a news anchor say, "Normally we go to the Olympics for stories of inspiration, but Chaunte Lowe didn't even have to go to the Olympics to inspire us all." I hope that he was right. I was watching the opening ceremonies for the first time from my house with my kids instead of in the infield with my team. When the opening ceremonies came on, they showed this video called What Agnes Saw. It was a media documentary of what Hungarian gymnast Agnes Coletti saw during her 100 years of life. And in between legends like Jesse Owens and Simone Biles was me. And it wasn't just me figuratively, it was me jumping over the bar, that last jump in Rio. And my kids looked at me and they said, "Mommy, you made it to the Olympics." I cried so deeply because I knew they were right. In a moment that should have felt like a massive failure, a time where I failed to make it back to the Olympic Games, I felt a sense of pride. I captured that elusive feeling that I thought that I was going to feel so many years ago from getting that Olympic medal. I felt the strength of carrying a community on my back and knowing that I was one part of a bigger picture. When I reflect over the last 2 years, I know that sharing my story in my most vulnerable moment was the key. It wasn't a moment where I had perfect FloJo nails. I didn't have perfect FloJo hair. I realized that who I was before cancer was transfixed on wanting to beat everyone. I needed everybody to know my name. I wanted them to know I was great. But the me who emerged from that cancer journey was one that understood that the fight of my life was not just for myself, that there's a tremendous amount of pride fighting for everyone else, and that when children see my story and they realize that the best thing that athletics can do for us is to lift us up, and that with hard work, determination, and grit, you can get out of difficult situations, but that is just the beginning. When we step back and realize that we are stronger together and we take up the plight of our brothers and sisters, we are truly understanding the meaning of life. In a time when we are inundated with self-help and selfies and self-this and self-that, we are missing out on a huge opportunity to fight for one another, to tap into an infinite source of strength and power that will propel us all. I just want you to understand that when we fight for one another, we're fighting for a greater cause that has a deeper fulfillment that will change the world. The me that emerged from the fight of my life understands this. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for allowing me to be that for you.